Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. This time we're going to be tackling Arthur Schopenhauer.
Oh, wow.
And we've got selections from volumes 1, 2, and 3 of The World as Will and Idea.
That's quite the undertaking.
Yeah, it's a pretty dense read.
Yeah,
But I think we can get to some really interesting stuff here.
I think so too.
So the main thing we're going to be looking at today is Schopenhauer's ideas about the human will
Right.
and how that relates to our intellect.
Okay.
And then ultimately how all of that shapes our experience of reality.
And how we see the world around us.
Exactly. So to jump right in,
Yeah.
Schopenhauer had this really radical idea that the driving force behind everything
Okay.
isn't reason or logic,
Right.
but this blind, relentless force he calls will.
The will.
The will, exactly.
And
it gets even more interesting because
okay.
this will isn't just limited to humans.
Right.
He saw it as like the underlying energy of all of nature.
So it's everywhere.
Everywhere.
Nah.
And he makes this comparison to something like the force of gravity, which we don't fully understand.
Right. We just kind of observe it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But we can see its effects everywhere.
Yeah.
So he's saying the will works in a similar way.
Okay.
It's constantly striving.
It wants to be fulfilled.
It wants to be fulfilled.
Okay.
And we experience it most directly as our own desires.
Yeah, like our own personal will.
Exactly.
But it's also in like everything else around us.
Right. And he even said that the human body is the most immediate objectification of the will.
Wow.
So that's kind of a big,
Heavy.
a heavy concept to start off with.
Yeah. So the will is like this force behind everything we do.
It seems like it.
And our bodies are like the physical manifestation of it.
Yeah. And it makes you wonder then,
Yeah.
where does our intellect fit into all of this?
Right. Because if this will's in charge,
Yeah.
what about our thinking minds?
What's the role of our thinking?
Yeah, what are we doing here?
Exactly.
If it's all just will.
Right.
Well, Schopenhauer argued that the intellect actually evolved to serve the will,
Okay.
not the other way around.
So we like to think we're in control.
Right. We like to think we're running the show.
But actually,
But maybe not.
maybe not.
Maybe it's the will.
Maybe it's the will that's in control.
And our intellect is just its tool.
That's a little unsettling.
It's a bit humbling, isn't it?
It is.
And it gets even more interesting.
Oh, boy.
Because Schopenhauer didn't think our intellect was completely objective.
Okay.
He said it's always being influenced by the will.
So our desires are shaping how we see the world.
Definitely.
We're seeing the world through these...
Will-tinted glasses.
Yeah, will-tinted glasses.
That's a good way to put it.
That's kind of freaky.
It is a little bit.
Yeah.
But he uses this analogy to explain it.
Okay.
He talks about the intellect as a light of nature.
Okay. A light.
Yeah, illuminating the world so the will can act.
Okay, so we're not stumbling around in the dark.
Right.
The intellect is helping us see.
It's showing us the way.
Okay.
But the key here
Yeah.
is that the intellect can only grasp the surface of things.
Okay.
It can't fully comprehend the true essence.
What did he call it?
He called it the thing in itself.
Thing in itself.
Yeah.
That sounds very philosophical.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Okay, so the thing in itself,
Yeah.
we can never really know that.
Not fully.
But for Schopenhauer, the thing in itself is the will.
Yeah.
It's the force behind everything, but our little intellects
Our limited little intellect.
can't fully grasp it.
It's a mystery.
Okay, this is getting pretty deep.
Yeah, we're going deep.
But listeners, stick with us
Yeah.
because we're about to unpack Schopenhauer's world as idea,
Ah, yes.
which ties directly into this whole will and intellect thing we've been talking about.
They're all connected.
So the world as idea
Yeah.
is Schopenhauer's concept that the world we experience is basically a representation
In our minds.
that our minds create,
A mental model.
like a mental model of the world.
Exactly.
And it's shaped by how we perceive things.
Right by our senses.
And the tools our intellect uses
Yes.
to try to make sense of it all.
To put it all together.
Are these things
Time, space, causality.
time, space, causality?
Yeah, those are the big ones.
Okay, so the world we see,
Yeah.
hear, touch,
All of it.
it's all filtered through our own minds.
It's all in our heads,
like a mental movie.
projected by the will.
Oh, wow.
It's a wild idea.
That's pretty wild.
And this actually links back to Kant.
Okay.
Kant had this idea of the thing in itself.
Right.
Remember, he said we can never truly know the essence of things,
Yeah.
only how they appear to us.
Okay.
And Schopenhauer took that idea
And ran with it.
and ran with it.
Okay.
He said that the thing in itself is actually the will.
The will again?
The will is the ultimate reality.
Wow. Okay, so...
It's the force behind everything.
But our intellects can't fully grasp it.
We just see its shadow.
So we're basically stuck in this world as idea.
It seems that way.
Forever separated from the true reality.
For the will itself.
That sounds kind of depressing.
It can be a bit bleak.
It can.
But Schopenhauer did offer some glimmers of hope.
Okay, tell me more.
He thought there are moments when our intellect can detach from the will.
Detach from the will.
Break free for a little while.
And what happens then?
Well, he thought this was connected to...
Genius.
Genius.
Madness.
Two sides of the same coin.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Genius and madness.
How were they connected?
That's a bit of a leap.
So Schopenhauer believed they both involve
Okay.
the intellect breaking free from the will's influence.
So in moments of genius,
Yes.
the intellect escapes.
Briefly escape.
And that allows for
Insights.
artistic creation
Creativity.
and deeper understanding of the world.
Exactly.
So artists and geniuses are like tapping into...
The raw power of the will.
I can see how that might be seen as a kind of madness.
Right. It's a dangerous game.
It is.
But with madness, the detachment becomes permanent.
Oh.
So the intellect is constantly disconnected.
And that leads to...
A distorted view of reality.
So it's like...
A break from how most people experience the world.
Genius is this carefully controlled dance with the will.
I like that.
And madness is getting completely lost in its rhythm.
That's a great way to put it.
And this is where Schopenhauer's view on art comes in.
Yes, art.
He saw art as a kind of redemption,
Okay.
a way to escape the will's grip.
At least for a little while.
For a little while.
Okay.
So he believed that contemplating something beautiful,
Like a work of art,
or even nature,
a beautiful sunset,
allows us to forget about our own desires
our own little worries,
and spirit.
a purer kind of knowing,
A pure kind of knowing.
free from the will.
Okay, so like losing ourselves in a painting.
Yes.
Or the power of a symphony.
Losing yourself in the music.
Those can be moments of true freedom.
Moments of liberation.
That's pretty powerful.
It is.
And he ranked different art forms
Did he?
based on how much liberation they offered.
I'm curious where he put music.
Music was at the top
I had a feeling.
because he saw it as the most direct expression of the will itself.
Interesting.
Music can be so emotionally powerful.
It really can.
It bypasses all that rational thinking.
It speaks to something deeper.
So he thought music wasn't just imitating the world,
Hmm.
it was expressing the will directly.
All
By the
right.
same force that drives all of creation.
So when we listen to
And
music,
connecting with something fundamental.
something universal,
This is all incredibly complex.
there's a lot to unpack.
But I'm starting to see how the pieces fit together.
Yeah, it's all coming together.
This relentless will, the intellect as its tool,
Trying to make sense of it all.
and art offering us these little glimpses of freedom.
Little escapes
Yeah.
from the will's grip.
So for Schopenhauer,
Yes.
true freedom
Lasting peace.
comes from
Denying the will.
denying the will altogether.
That's the ultimate goal.
That sounds pretty hard.
It's not easy.
So you're talking about rejecting all of our desires.
Not necessarily rejecting.
Oh,
But we're like understanding them.
It's finding a way to move beyond their control.
Exactly.
So practices like
Asceticism,
compassion,
ethical behavior,
these could help us quiet the will.
find some peace.
That sounds like an incredibly difficult path.
It's a lifelong journey.
Well, listeners,
Yes?
we've just scratched the surface here
You've only just begun.
of Schopenhauer's intricate philosophy.
There's so much more to explore.
But it's worth the effort.
Absolutely.
And it raises a really important question
Oh,
if Schopenhauer is right.
okay.
And all this striving for what we desire
Mm-hmm.
actually leads to suffering.
Oh,
What does that mean for how we live our lives?
that's a big question.
It is
A lot to think about.
a lot to think about.
Yeah.
We've only just begun to explore.
The depths of Schopenhauer.
So we really encourage you to dive into his works
Yeah.
and see what insights you discover for yourselves.
You might be surprised.
You might be surprised.
What you find.
Yeah. But for now, let's take a breath
Yeah.
and let all of this sink in.
Take a moment.
Because in the next part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
we're going to delve even deeper
good.
into the specific arguments
nitty gritty.
and examples that Schopenhauer uses to support these ideas.
I can't wait.
So stay tuned
And get ready to go even deeper.
into the world of Arthur Schopenhauer.
It's going to be a wild ride.
Buckle up.
Welcome back. So we left off talking about the will and the world as idea.
Right. This idea that the world we experience is really a mental representation created by our minds.
Exactly. And to understand that better, we need to dig into how Schopenhauer viewed knowledge itself.
Okay, let's do that.
He made this distinction between what he called ideas of perception and abstract ideas.
Okay, so ideas of perception. Those are like our direct sensory experiences.
Yeah, like seeing a tree or hearing a bird saying.
Okay, and then abstract ideas. Those are more like concepts.
Right, things like justice or freedom or even the concept of a tree itself.
Okay, so those are more complex ideas that we form in our minds.
Exactly. And he saw those abstract ideas as something unique to humans.
So that's what sets us apart from other animals.
He thought
Our ability to form these abstract concepts.
our ability to think about things that aren't right in front of us.
Okay, that makes sense.
And he was really building on Kant's ideas here.
Right. Kant was all about how our minds structure our experience of the world.
Exactly. And Schopenhauer took that even further.
How so?
He emphasized that even our most basic perception
Just seeing something.
is already an intellectual act.
Wait, so it's not just passively taking in information?
Nope. Our minds are actively shaping that information.
Through those forms of perception we talked about.
Time-space causality.
Right, so we're not just sponges soaking it all up.
We're processing it through these mental frameworks.
Okay, so we're back to the world as idea.
It all ties together.
What we experience is already shaped by how our minds are structured.
And Schopenhauer really dives into how those forms of perception shape our understanding.
Give me an example.
Well, he talks about how the very concept of change
Things changing over time.
only makes sense because of the relationship between space and time.
Okay, so those two things are linked.
They work together.
I'm not sure I follow.
Imagine a leaf changing color.
Okay.
We perceive that change, right?
Yeah, it goes from green to brown.
But it only has meaning because it happens in a specific place
On the tree,
over a period of time.
as summer turns to fall.
Exactly. Without that interplay between space and time, the concept of change wouldn't make sense.
So you're saying it's not just that things change,
It's that they change in a particular place over a particular time.
and that's how our minds make sense of it.
That's how we experience it.
Does this apply to other concepts too?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He talks about how our understanding of cause and effect is also shaped by these mental structures.
So the idea that one event causes another,
Even that is filtered through how our minds work,
it's like our minds are always imposing order on the chaos of experience
trying to make sense of it all.
through these categories of time, space, and causality.
Those are the tools we have.
It makes you wonder, though,
What?
if our experience is so shaped by our minds,
Yeah,
how do we know what's real?
that's a big question.
Like, how do we distinguish dreams from reality?
That's something Schopenhauer tackled head on.
What did he say?
He said the key difference is that law of causality,
Cause and effect.
the way our minds connect events,
Because in dreams, things happen,
all sorts of crazy things.
but they don't always follow the logic of cause and effect.
Right. A rabbit might suddenly turn into a hat.
Or you might fly without wings.
Exactly. In dreams, those connections are loosey-goosey.
But in reality, we expect things to make sense.
We look for those causal connections.
It's like cause and effect is the glue that holds our reality together.
That's a great way to put it.
So without it, everything falls apart.
We lose our sense of what's real.
And this leads into Schopenhauer's critique of traditional metaphysics.
Oh, yeah. He had some strong opinions about that.
What did he disagree with?
Well, a lot of philosophers were trying to prove the existence of the external world.
The world outside our minds.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they were using this principle of sufficient reason.
Which is the idea that everything must have a cause.
Yeah, they were applying that even to the subject itself.
The subject being the one who's experiencing the world.
The I that's doing the perceiving.
Okay, so they were trying to find a cause for the perceiver.
As if the perceiver itself was just another object in the world.
But Schopenhauer said that's a mistake.
A big one.
Why?
He said the object only exists for the subject.
As its idea, its mental representation.
So we can't use causality to explain the subject itself.
It's like trying to use the laws of physics to explain the physicist.
Exactly. It's a category error.
So the perceiver, the subject, is outside the realm of cause and effect.
For Schopenhauer, that's where the will comes in.
Ah, the will again.
He believed the will, as the thing in itself, exists outside of causality.
It's the ultimate cause.
But it's beyond what our intellects can grasp directly.
It's like the ground of being.
You could say that.
It's a lot to wrap your head around.
It is, but this is really the core of Schopenhauer's philosophy.
Okay, break it down for me.
He's saying the world as we experience it is just one side of reality.
The side our intellects can access?
The phenomenal world.
Okay.
But there's another side.
A noumenal world.
The side of the will.
The force behind everything.
And we can only glimpse it indirectly.
Through our desires.
And by our actions.
So it's like there's this whole hidden dimension operating beneath the surface.
A hidden dimension of will.
Wow.
And sometimes we catch glimpses of it.
Through those moments of insight.
Maybe through art.
That's where we'll pick up next time.
I can't wait.
And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into Arthur Schopenhauer.
We made it.
We did. We've been through a lot.
A lot of will, a lot of intellect, a lot of world as idea.
Yeah. And now we're going to talk about art.
Art?
Yeah. This might seem like a bit of a shift.
But it's all connected.
Because Schopenhauer actually saw art as this refuge.
An escape.
From the relentless striving of the will.
A way to find some peace.
But how does that actually work?
Well, he believed that when we contemplate something beautiful,
a painting, a sculpture,
even a beautiful sunset,
our focus shifts.
We forget about ourselves.
All those little desires and anxieties.
They fade away.
And we enter this state of
pure knowing.
Will-less knowing.
Yes, free from the will's grip.
So it's about losing yourself in the beauty of something.
Completely absorbed in the experience.
Then in that state,
Schopenhauer believed we catch a glimpse of something deeper.
The will itself.
But not the personal will.
The universal will.
The timeless essence of the will.
Unclouded by our own little egos.
Exactly. It's a moment of transcendence.
And he thought different art forms offer different levels of liberation.
Depending on how directly they express the will.
And I know he had a special place in his heart for music.
Of course.
He considered it the highest form of art.
The most direct expression of the will.
Because it's free from language.
With the three images.
It speaks to us on a deeper level.
It's pure emotion.
Pure will.
And that's why music can be so powerful.
So moving.
It bypasses our rational minds.
Goes straight to the heart.
And he also had some interesting insights about other art forms.
Oh, yeah?
Like architecture.
He saw that as a representation of the struggle between gravity and support.
Which kind of reflects the will's striving against resistance.
Always pushing against limitations.
Then visual arts.
Painting, sculpture.
He said those capture the ideas.
The archetypes of the world.
Those eternal forms behind the ever-changing appearances.
Like the idea of beauty itself.
So each art form gives us a different window into the will.
A different perspective.
But true liberation
doesn't come from art alone.
It comes from denying the will altogether.
That's the ultimate goal.
Which sounds pretty intense. It's not easy.
But he saw it as the only way to escape.
The cycle of desire and suffering.
Through practices like
asceticism.
Ethical conduct.
To gradually quiet the will.
And find peace.
Well, Schopenhauer's philosophy is definitely not for the faint of heart.
It's a challenge.
But it's incredibly thought-provoking.
And rewarding.
It forces us to look at the world in a new way.
To question our assumptions.
And maybe even find a path to inner peace.
If we're willing to put in the work.
Well, that's all the time we have for today.
Can't believe it's over.
I know, it went by so fast.
3 parts just flew by.
But we've covered a lot of ground.
We've explored the will, the intellect, the world as idea, even art.
And we've barely scratched the surface of Schopenhauer's thinking.
There's so much more to discover.
So we encourage you to read his works for yourselves.
And form your own conclusions.
Because that's what Schopenhauer would have wanted.
He was all about thinking for yourself.
And questioning everything.
Even the nature of reality itself.
So until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.
Into the world of ideas.